Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Nain Shorts Christmas edition, because it is the season, unfortunately. I'm not a big fan of all the lights and colors, but everyone else seems to be. So, hey, let's be merry for a bit. Now, training doesn't stop just because it got colder and we're going to spend a whole bunch of money we don't have on presents that people don't need, but we continue tracking what it is that we're doing. And recently we had a really interesting class with my daughter, and it was based on the idea of fear. How do we manage that fear, that initial impact, that rush that we get, that panic that happens when somebody attacks you without you realizing, without you knowing that it's coming. Just it happens, and all of a sudden you have to respond to the situation. Now, I strategically use the word respond because it's more of a mentality exercise than reaction. Now, we're going to react because something happens and our body does what it's supposed to do. But we can train that. We train how to do it better, more efficiently. We train how to do it. So at what point does that reaction become a response where you are taking control of that reaction, so it becomes something useful, where say you're falling, instead of putting your arms out straight and possibly breaking them, you learn how to roll with it, you learn how to roll your shoulders, so then you are safer. You still react in the sense that you're keeping yourself from harm, but mentally it's a response because you trained it, you trained how to do that. And the big thing for her was not really understanding the fear. So what do? We blindfolded her. We made sure she couldn't see or understand, having to use her other senses to get a good idea of where the threat is coming from. So also her awareness increasing by using more than just her sight. But what do you do afterwards? And at the beginning, it wasn't quite the reaction she wanted. The panic sets in and there wasn't anything going on. But her understanding of it afterwards was amazing. And that's where she really shown her growth in the mentality behind it, because it's what she understood, the association she made between what she's been taught before and how she can now use it in a situation that wasn't scripted, that wasn't set, oh, we're going to do XYZ to this particular punch or this particular approach. I didn't approach the same way every single time. There was always a different angle that I took. It was always a surprise, and her responses and her mentality really grew. And the focus of this particular episode is less about that exercise, but everything that came afterwards, the conversations that we had, the mentality. Because she did make mention that she was talking to a friend of hers, and he practices other martial arts. I believe he does karate, and he's doing Muay Thai, and he's trying to get into jiu-jitsu. So he has some experience in the martial arts. But they were having a conversation regarding what she does and what he does. And he was asking, oh, where does it come from? Well, how did it develop? This and this. And Nisa answered to the best of her ability, but it didn't seem to satisfy his curiosity on it. And I started wondering why that is. Now, I personally feel that we don't really do anything different from anyone else. 2 arms, 2 feet, human fight. That's it. That's what we have. Our focus is self-defense, not sports. We use weapons as tools to train ideas and concepts, not necessarily training how to use those weapons, although that does happen over time because you are swinging things and understanding blade orientation and all these other ideas, but it isn't our main focus because we're not going to walk around with knives particularly, or machetes or swords or even sticks at any given point. So it's more of how do we use the tool to teach concepts and the movements and the mechanics that go along with it. So again, to me, the human body is the human body, so we don't feel like we do anything very different from any other martial art. So what is different then, and why was it difficult for this young man to understand what was happening? And it kind of took me down a rabbit hole of thoughts. some of the things that I've come across in training for the last 12 years in the Bladed Mind, now the Bladed Mind Ronin, is that I've noticed that people with high ranks, people with many, many years of experience in training resonate really well with a lot of the concepts that we talk about, a lot of the ideas that we bring forth, and even the way that we present them to our students and the way we create training modules to pass those concepts along or to get those ideas through them. So to me, that's great validation, knowing that what we're doing is something that other martial artists have come across. So to me, that even adds more to the claim that we're not doing anything much different than any other practice or any other practitioner. So what is really the biggest difference? And the only thing that I could really come up with is the mentality. What is the mentality that we bring forth, and what is the focus of that mentality? And I think that's where we sort of branch out a little further than other arts, because other arts have a much larger structure, and I guess you could say because we don't have the lineage, we don't have the long history of the art behind it, it's easier for us to get away from that. It's so much harder when you have 2,000 years or even 500 years of tradition behind everything, the history, the culture. So it's that much more difficult to get away from that. So it has to be taught a certain way. It has to be progressive a certain way. Not to mention, somebody who's young doesn't have all their mental faculties where they could be or should be at certain ages, or where it will be later on in their life as they get older and mature. I use that in quotations and ironically, because those of you who know me probably wouldn't use that word to describe me at all. But hopefully these younger kids are going to be a lot more adult than we are now. But the point is that they're not there yet. So there are certain concepts and ideas that they're not going to really understand or get through their minds, because one, they learn things a certain way, they're taught things a certain way, so that's what they know, they believe it, they believe in their instructor and the school and all the other things that go along with it. So it's difficult to branch outside of that. It isn't until they experience things on their own, fail, succeed, fail again, try again, keep going, and persevere beyond all of the moments where you just want to quit martial arts, that they start seeing their own truth, their own understanding. And I believe many of the instructors that do watch this show would agree that you get to a certain point in your training where you start doing things differently than your instructor. All the information is still the same. You may even still teach it the same, but the way that you process that has changed even slightly, because it has to adapt to you, the individual. And because we've seen that happen in real time, we've seen and heard the stories of people that have gone through it, well, that's sort of what became the focus of the Bladed Mind Ronin. If that is something that we all eventually reach, if we stay with martial arts long enough, then why don't we focus on that aspect? How do we get an individual to learn on their own, to do the things based on what they're physically capable of and what they're mentally mature enough to do at that time, at that moment, and use whatever physical stuff that we did teach, adaptive to how they're able to understand it and perform it. So in that sense, that's really the only difference that we have, or that I can see. And the thing about it is that we're not the only ones that do it. More and more I'm starting to see other instructors, other arts, and they've probably been doing it far longer than we have, but because of connectivity, we're starting to see it more and more, where you have a difference in mentality, where you have a difference of approach when it comes to the training aspect of it. So we start building individual mindsets instead of one general idea. Nothing wrong with the general idea. That's the best way to teach traditional arts, because there is a structure, there is a history. So it's understandable. We don't have that. So we're doing it this way, and it works for us. It's not going to work for everybody, and it's not going to work for every single art. However, we are doing our best to make sure that the concepts and ideas aren't rooted in anything physical, aren't rooted in any specific art. Therefore, it could be disseminated into anyone who understands or makes some sort of connection with whatever it is that we say is more than welcome and free to use that and to enhance or advance whatever it is that they're working towards. It's not something that we feel, oh, it's just ours. It just has to be kept here and it has to be taught this specific way, because we don't even do that. The way that we taught 5 years ago isn't how we teach now. The way that we teach one student isn't the way that we teach another, because they're different. Things change, things grow, mentalities are expanded or contracted depending on what information we feed it. So it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. The human body is the human body. Sure, we have that connection in every physical activity that we do, but the way that we approach it, well, that's to the individual. And for me, this is my perspective on that. Again, I don't believe we do anything different from any other martial art, but we approach it a little bit different, and it sometimes is difficult to get that across to other people until they reach a certain mental degree where they can see beyond what was taught, beyond the structure that they know and understand. And then they're like, oh, I see where that's going. And I believe those are the reasons why we have the connections that we have now. And can we do a little bit better? We're constantly trying to do better to get this information across so everyone, or at least the majority of people, can understand it and do something productive with it. And really, that's all I see. It was a fun conversation that my daughter had with somebody, and it really didn't end with much of an understanding, because she too is growing and is still very young, despite the fact that Rico says she's way smarter than I am. And I don't say it in front of her, but yeah, she pretty much is. And she's going to be really great at the art as long as she sticks with it. She's already showing great progress, and I can't wait to see her growth. So at one point, she will probably be better than I am at explaining what we do, and even somebody who's young and doesn't have the experience will be able to understand it. And that's the hope, that the next generation does better than we do and takes it further than we ever could imagine. At least that's the hope. Until then, we're going to keep on training. We're going to keep on working on our craft and staying as sharp as we possibly can, and passing on as many ideas as we possibly can to as many people that are willing to listen. And I know I didn't even mention Tommy this whole time, but he's just been chilling here because he's a good boy. He's a good boy, aren't you, Tommy? You're a good boy. Unlike your sister, who's... Never mind, we're not going to get into that. But thank you for joining me on another one of Nain Shorts. Until the next one, as usual, 3, 2, 1, cut! Time to go, Tommy. Time to go, buddy.